Either way. Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education to order. Members of the board, the first item of the agenda calls for the approval of the agenda. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell?
I'd like to move that we approve the agenda for the December 14, 2020 Wilson County Board of Education meeting.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Powell, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the agenda for December 14, 2020 meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please respond to the roll call. Mr. Borkin, please know I cannot call on your vote today, right now, but we will in just a moment. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously 6-0. We will ask for the installation of our new board members. So if Mrs. Horrison will prepare to do that, and she can call them in the order of preference that she chooses. And before she does that, please make note that this meeting is being held remotely through Zoom. And we're using a hybrid because we do have a couple of board members not present. The following board members are present here in the boardroom: Mr. Breen, Mr. Mercer, myself, and absent are, in remote, are Mrs. Boyette, Mrs. Barnes, and Mrs. Powell. The meeting is being televised on Spectrum and Greenlight channels 22 and live streamed through the Wilson County Schools YouTube channel. The public can also view the meeting by clicking on a link on the Wilson County Schools Facebook page and the Wilson County Schools website. Please note that in keeping with the Governor's Executive Order 180, we are required to be masked during the entire operation of the meeting, and those of us who are present are adhering to that executive order. So if Mrs. Horrison is ready, then please, whichever order you choose.
I am honored to administer the oath of office to Velma H. Barnes, who was reelected to District 2. Ms. Barnes, please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand.
How do you want to assist me?
Ms. Barnes, please repeat after me. I, Velma H. Barnes, do solemnly swear
I, Velma H. Barnes, do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States
that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith,
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent within,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
as board member of the Wilson County Board of Education, so help me God.
as board member of the Wilson County Board of Education, so help me God.
Congratulations. Please sign the 3 copies. Mr. Mercer?
Do I go up here?
Yes. I am honored to administer the oath of office to Mr. Henry E. Mercer, who is reelected to District 4. Please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Mr. Mercer, please repeat after me. I, Henry E. Mercer, do solemnly swear
I, Henry E. Mercer, do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States
that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith,
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
as board member of the Wilson County Board of Education, so help me God.
as board member of the Wilson County Board of Education, so help me God.
Congratulations. Please sign the 3 copies. I am honored to administer the oath of office to William Blake Boykin, who was elected to District 6.
Ms. Boykin?
Please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Mr. Boykin, please repeat after me. I, William B. Boykin, do solemnly swear
I, William B. Boykin, do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States
that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith,
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
as board member of the Wilson County Board of Education, so help me God.
as board member of the Wilson County Board of Education, so help me God.
Congratulations. Please sign the 3 copies. Would you like to introduce your guest? Would you like to introduce your
Oh,
guest?
yeah. This is my wife, Brittany Boykin.
Welcome, Mrs. Boykin. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're fine.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
We'll try to get them back to you in one piece.
Thank you.
Mr. Boykin, we'd like to take this time to welcome you to the board. And please know that we have a good working relationship with each other and that there is a lot to be done on behalf of the children of Wilson County Schools. Thank you so much for your interest and your willingness to help in the governance of the school system. Thank you so very much. Next item on the agenda calls for the organization of the board. So at this point, I will turn the meeting over to the superintendent for the purpose of conducting the election of the office for chairman of the board. Dr. Mills?
Board members, at this time, I'll open the floor for nominations for chairman.
Dr. Mills. I'd like to nominate Dr. Christine Fitch.
Second.
Okay, there's a nomination for Dr. Fitch by Henry Mercer, seconded by Deborah Powell. Heard someone else?
Dr. Mills,
Yes, Ms. Boyette.
I'd like to nominate Ryan Breen.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Ms. Boyette has nominated Ryan Breen and seconded by Blake Boykin. Okay. Any other nominations?
I move nominations be closed.
Okay, we've got a motion, nominations be closed. Need a second?
Second.
Motion's been properly moved and seconded to close the nominations. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Got a
Aye.
roll call.
you did
You
the
do a roll
roll
call?
call. Mhm.
All right, we'll go in alphabetical order, make it easier.
All right.
All right, Ms. Barnes,
Pardon?
nominate, motion to close the nominations?
Aye.
All right. Ms. Boyette,
Aye.
Mr. Boykin,
Aye.
Mr. Breen,
Aye.
Dr. Fitch,
Aye.
Mr. Mercer,
Aye.
Ms. Powell.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. At this point, board members, we need to have a roll call vote for chair. We'll go in order of nominations. All those in favor of, voting in favor of Christine Fitch as chair, please respond. I will go through the roll call. Ms. Barnes,
Aye.
Ms. Boyette,
Nay.
Mr. Boykin,
Nay.
Mr. Breen,
Nay.
Dr. Fitch,
Aye.
Mr. Mercer,
Aye.
Ms. Powell.
Aye.
That motion carries 4-3. I don't think we need to continue on. Correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, correct. At this point, I'll turn meeting over to Dr. Fitch to continue the process for election of a vice chairman. Madam Chair?
Members of the board, the floor is now open for nomination for the position of Vice Chair of the Board of Education.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I would like to nominate Henry Mercer.
And I second.
Hearing no other nominations, the chair will declare the nominations closed, and by acclamation, recognize that Mr. Mercer will be the vice chair. Thank you so very much. Mr. Breen, if you would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, to be followed by a moment of silence.
Will everybody please stand? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda calls for the approval of the minutes. We have minutes of November 9, 2020, which was a regular board meeting, and December the 7th, 2020, which was a special board meeting. What is the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I move that we approve the regular board meeting minutes of November 9th, 2020, and the September meeting, special call meeting of December 7th, 2020.
So,
It's been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the November 9th, 2020 regular board meeting minutes and the December 7th, 2020 special board meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Under the chairman's report, just a very few items. First of all, to my fellow board members, thank you for the continued support and confidence of having elected me to continue as your chair. I will continue to work for the benefit of all the children as we continue in the uncharted waters we now find ourselves in and a new normal. Let me congratulate Mrs. Velma Barnes, Mr. Blake Boykin, and Mr. Henry Mercer on your election or re-election to the board. And Mr. Boykin, we welcome you to this, your first board meeting. There will be many more to follow in these next 4 years. I want to offer a thank you to Dr. Mills, the central office staff, most of all to the teachers and staff, all the employees of Wilson County Schools for their efforts above and beyond to get us through these trying times of the COVID-19 environment. To our families, our parents, and our students, we thank each of you for the understanding and patience shown as changes in the learning environment have occurred. To our ever-supportive community and partners, your continued support of Wilson County Schools is much appreciated, and it's not taken for granted. I wish for each of the students the best in all of the testing and what is yet to come. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish season's greetings to one and all as we prepare for our holiday break, which is well-deserved and very much needed. May it provide the needed time of rejuvenation and reflection, in addition to peace and joy. May each of you be blessed and safe, and I wish you a happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas, and a happy New Year that will soon be upon us. And that concludes the chairman's report. I'll now turn to the superintendent for his report. Dr. Mills.
Madam Chair, board members, I too would like to begin by welcoming Mr. Boykin to the board. We look forward to working with you, and we appreciate your willingness to serve and the commitment to our students, and congratulations again. It's a little bit different with masks on and virtual, but it'll get better when we get back in place and then in person to person. Board members and others, just for recapping before we get into tonight's agenda, under my report I'll share a few items. We've adjusted our schedule for students as we approach the holiday break. Beginning Thursday, December 17th, all students will transition to remote learning through the last day of the semester, December 22nd. Our break is from the 23rd of December through Sunday, January 3rd. Our high school students are still completing EOC and CPE tests, and they'll still take those tests on campus as required by law right now. So that message went out this weekend so folks could have a chance to plan and make preparations. We've also adjusted our curbside food service schedule this week. Middle schools are serving curbside meals tomorrow from 12 to 1, and high schools will serve from 11:30 to 1:30. Gardeners and Vets and Bynum are already offering curbside meals to their families from 11:30 to 1:30 because they've already transitioned to remote learning. And beginning Wednesday, all 23 traditional schools will offer curbside meals from 11:30 to 1:30. The last day of the schedule is Tuesday, December 22nd, because holiday break begins 23rd. So meals will not be served during Christmas break. Okay. I do have something I'm going to try and share the screen. For the past several years, we've held a contest for elementary students to design Christmas and holiday cards that we send to colleagues in Wilson and across the state. And selecting the winners is probably one of the hardest things we do because all of them are really neat and colorful, and the students do such a great job. And this year we selected 3 winners, and I wanted to kind of show you the impact from the cards that are going out across the state again and locally. Let me see if I can share my screen to get these for you. All right, hold on. All right. All right. This is one of the 3 winners. This is art was provided by Jaleesa from Winstead Elementary School. Okay. And let me go get my next one. I'm going to share that screen. Go in and out, here we go. Okay. And this artwork is from Charlotte from New Hope Elementary School. with the way the weather's been lately, I don't know how much we're gonna get the snowman, but I'm pulling for it. And finally, our third picture is, all right, let me share this one. This one's kind of cute. See if you can notice the piece. And this is from Ella Blair from Rock Ridge Elementary School. If you look closely, I believe that's a mask on the reindeer.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I thought that was really cute. So Charlotte from New Hope, Ella from Rock Ridge, and Jaleesa from Winstead were really proud of the work they did. And in fact, they shared some of their holiday spirit with us that we could share out across the state. And we'll be presenting them with cards of their artwork, and the principals will be sharing that with them, and we'll get some pictures and get this back around. That's something we do every year. They did a great job, and it puts everybody in holiday spirit, so definitely wanted to share those with everyone. Just as an update on a couple things, and I'll be done. The Pixelot systems are set to be installed. That, again, was the video systems for the athletics. They're set to be installed at Hunt High School on December 10th, Fike High School on December 18th, and Bedingfield High School on December 22nd. And that, if you remember right, at each school will be in the main competition gyms and the football fields. And once the units are installed and calibrated and activated, they're ready to stream immediately and available for fans to purchase subscriptions. The cost of the subscriptions are $10.99 for a monthly pass and $69.99 for a yearly pass. And folks can subscribe to those events online, and we've got the links, and we'll put them up on our website and share those and send those around. So those are underway. Also, we were notified by the Wilson County Health Department that our school system has been selected by the North Carolina Health and Human Services Department to be part of their pilot K-12 COVID antigen testing program. I think that was a blurb in it on WREL. I was trying to save it till today, and it might have gotten out there. Around 3,200 tests, and the health department participated in a webinar regarding the testing today. Teresa Ellen from the health department is on the meeting with us right now, and she may want to comment about that since I just shared that information.
Welcome, Ms. Ellen.
Thank you, Dr. Mills. We're excited about that. Actually, they called and asked us to participate in this pilot because we had already been testing through our WASH centers, and we had a really good system. So we were actually invited. So we're excited about being a part and continuing to provide testing services to Wilson County students and teachers.
So I think that's another impact of WASH and the partnership and cooperation we have with the health department for us to be able to be selected for that. I think Vance County was another one, and I can't remember the third one. Ms. Ellen may know off the top of her head, but I cannot remember the third. I think there were 3 counties.
Ms. Ellen, could you please tell us how this is going to work? Is this going to be at a cost to the students or staff, or what is the process that will be followed for this?
What is the process for how they get tested? Is that what you're asking?
No. Is this going to, since this is a pilot, is this going to be at a cost to the students or faculty, or what is happening with this pilot, please?
Okay, the pilot is for rapid tests, and the rapid tests are being provided by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services at no cost. So there is no cost to the students or teachers for the test.
Okay.
And this information is brand spanking new. I think they just had their webinar today. Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong. So there's information we need to get out, and we'll share more. But I wanted to go ahead and share it with you because it was starting to
right. But
out.
in all honesty, we've been testing all along too. So, but there are instances where if they take a rapid test, it may be necessary to do what we call a PCR test. And in that case, there is some charge for their insurance for that test. But for the rapid test, no charge.
Will the persons have to come to the WASH facility? Will they go to the health department? Exactly where do they have to go?
They will go to one of our 2 WASH facilities, either at Forest Hills or Bedingfield. They'll call ahead of time and register, and then we have a drive-up process. So for instance, at Forest Hills, we usually have them drive up and park right in front of the flagpole. They will call in and let the nurses know they're there, and then they go out to the parking lot and actually do the testing.
All right. Thank you very much.
I have just two of the quick tidbits. This is brand spanking news. We got email today, and we're excited to share that the Rock Ridge Elementary third grade teacher, Deanna Champa, has been selected as a finalist for the North Carolina Center for the Advancement of Teaching's 2020 Prudential Beginning Teacher of the Year Award. So that's really exciting. We got that today, and she was our district winner and advanced to the regional level. So she's now one of 27 regional finalists that are competing for the state title. Regional winners will attend a leadership session at NCAT's Color Week campus in April, where finalists will be interviewed and a winner announced. We're really proud of her and wish her all the luck as she moves forward. We're just really fortunate to have her as a new member of our family here, and look forward to hearing good things from the next step for her. But that's a great honor to be selected as a regional finalist, and also to get to go to NCAT is always a treat for our teachers, and that's a good experience. And so finally, Madam Chair, board members, I want to wish everyone a happy holiday season, and hope that everyone will have time to relax and stay safe, and we'll see 2020 through the end and start over. So, Madam Chair, that's my report.
Thank you so very much. Next on the agenda is the public input. This is the portion of our agenda that allows the public to address us. We do a little differently in this COVID environment, but each person is granted 3 minutes for his or her presentation. This portion of the meeting is for the board to hear matters of interest from the public. However, obscene or vulgar statements, personal attacks, and statements reasonably perceived to be disruptive or imminently threatening to the orderly operation of the meeting shall not be permitted. Today we have 5 persons who have signed up to address the board, and we are going to have Amber Lynch to read the letters. Please remember that there's a 3-minute limit. Mrs. Cornetta, if you would please serve as the timekeeper for the 3 minutes, it would be appreciated. So, Ms. Lynch, if you are ready, the first speaker is, the first letter comes from Jeanette Lobachario regarding remote learning.
Okay. As a mother of a child that has health conditions that could land him in the hospital or even worse, and I have 2 other children as well, we have chosen to keep our kids home. I believe that Wilson County should go back to all remote learning. Students should not be going to take tests. I'm sorry. The numbers are not getting better. I think the board members need to take all of this into consideration.
Thank you very much. The next correspondence comes from Tanya Skinner regarding high school reentry.
This is my second time sending an email regarding the reentry plan for high schools for the board meeting. I have to say I'm very disappointed for several reasons. I'm disappointed that this topic was not discussed at the last meeting on December 7th, and no notification was sent out prior to the meeting. I firmly believe that the conditions of the tracks at Hunt and Beddingfield are not more important than a child's education. I'm disappointed that more parents did not participate in the survey, and even more disappointed that the survey sent out is so vague. With that said, if parents do not participate in surveys sent out, the topic should not be put on the back burner. Every parent has options. The option to go virtual if you do not feel safe sending your student back to school. Every parent does not have the option to have in-person face-to-face instruction. COVID is not going away, just like the flu has not gone away. It is time for everyone to stop sticking their head in the sand, hoping this will go away. It is time for steps to be taken to get the children that will benefit from in-person instruction back in the schools. I would like to point out that everyone is raving over remote learning, but does everyone realize that some classes last maybe 30 minutes or the class gets canceled altogether? I do not fault the teachers because I honestly believe they are doing the best they can with the resources they have. And if I had to guess, lack communication on how things will be handled moving forward? Has the number of instructional hours required per school year changed? Because I honestly feel the students are the ones getting the short end of this deal. Please consider getting all students back in the classroom. Please consider the schedules that have worked in the elementary and middle schools for the high school population.
Thank you very much. The next is from Wes and Paige Hill regarding remote learning.
First, thank you for your service to the students of Wilson County. We realize that there are no easy answers to determining the optimal school schedule for all the students and staff in our county, and appreciate the effort and thought that you put into keeping them safe. As you consider options, we ask that you look to the college university model of opening up after Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. We believe that allowing approximately 3.5 weeks of time after Christmas will help mitigate the spread of COVID among our students and staff. Many of them could be exposed to COVID via travel and/or close contact with family and friends during the Christmas break. By going to remote learning for students and staff from January 3rd through the 19th at a minimum, we can help to ensure students and staff come back to school more safely than if they return just a week after Christmas. We realize that most students learn better while at school. We also realize that thankfully, COVID cases in school-age children are less severe than with adults. However, we have many teachers and staff that come in daily contact with students. It's important that they are considered as well. Once again, we appreciate all you do and thank you for considering this option. We hope each of you have a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much. The next is from Caleb Skinner. The subject is teachers' concerns.
Currently, we are in the midst of what has been inarguably the strangest and most trying year Americans, global citizens, and in our particular case, educators have ever faced. As you undoubtedly know, teachers have been forced to reinvent every aspect of their professional lives and their approaches to instruction. This being said, the voices of teachers must be heard and heeded as those who are working firsthand with students. We implore you to please advocate for us returning to Plan C in January, or at least not advocate for all the students to return to the middle schools as they have with elementary. The inarguable reality is that we are working the front lines, and we see the damage caused by moving students in middle school into an indecipherable schedule. In considering the students, grades are worse than has ever been seen, and attendance has never been more abysmal than it has been this 9 weeks. The safety precautions implemented, which include keeping students separated in immobile self-contained classrooms so as to avoid exposing students to too many people, have gone by the wayside because there have been so many teachers absent from school due to COVID-19 quarantines and COVID-19 testing. It should be noted that should a teacher test positive for the virus, they are not required to be retested after the 10-day quarantine period to deem if they are no longer contagious and therefore safe to return to the building. In the case of our school, which has blessedly been able to remain open thus far, in this past week, there have been 5 staff members working remotely due to testing. That means 5 classrooms have not had teachers because there are almost no substitutes available. And those teachers' students were moved into other classrooms, thereby effectively contaminating them. It would be entirely different if students were performing better after this initiation into Plan B, and improvement had been seen this 9 weeks. That was all our hope. However, from our most recent gradebook updates, one can see almost every one of our students has exclusively zeros. That is the state of our entire school, and as we understand the entire county, because the students are too confused and were given far too many options, leading them to believe that they could choose whether or not they needed to attend, whether virtual or face-to-face school at all. By giving them the power to choose how they might attend school, the integrity of attendance has been compromised. The combination of blue, green, and virtual on top of A days and B days is too complicated for even the teachers to grasp. How is it fair to ask that of 11 to 14-year-olds? I'm thinking of the teachers. It is simply not safe. No health concerns of teachers were taken into account by the county or from where we stand, the Board of Education, a board made up of elected officials who are meant to be the biggest champions for the well-being of teachers and students.
Final person is Cassandra Darden with a request to address the board. Ms. Lynch?
There she goes.
Okay.
I had to unmute, I'm sorry. On this past Saturday, December 12th, I received a robocall from Bedingfield High School staff indicating that students are required to return to school this week to take exams even if they have been taking classes remotely. Therefore, my first concern is regarding the requirement for students to return to school for end-of-course testing during the height of the coronavirus pandemic, which threatens the lives and well-being of students and children, families, teachers, and other school employees, and our communities. At a time when we are encountering the worst global pandemic, COVID-19, that has, according to the Wilson County, North Carolina dashboard, resulted in 5,752 deaths and 423,623 infections in North Carolina as of December 11th, 2020, the students are being asked to go to school for the sole purpose of taking a state exam. You can retake a test, but you cannot recover a life taken by the coronavirus. Why did those who are responsible for our educational system not have the foresight to take the necessary measures to decrease the potential for exposure of our children and families to this deadly virus that has resulted in the death of over 299,737 persons in the United States? Why did the state of North Carolina not obtain a waiver for these state exemptions? Months ago, the experts in immunology, such as Dr. Fauci and others, warned that COVID-19 would be the worst in the winter months. Governor Cooper recently signed Executive Order 181, which implemented, among other many safeguards, a statewide curfew for all North Carolinians and many businesses. If we are being asked to stay in our homes after 10 p.m., separate ourselves from family, friends, and others who do not live in our immediate household, to not allow family gatherings during the holidays, and to limit the number of persons gathering in public settings, why shouldn't similar measures and precautions be taken to protect our children? Many of the citizens in Wilson County and North Carolina are in a high-risk category, live at or below the poverty line, and do not have health insurance. I ask that you make our children and families a priority and get the waivers needed so that our students do not have to go to the schools to take these state tests when we have a crisis such as this. If we saw the need to give an option for remote learning, why not do the same for testing? Secondly, I'm concerned that the students with intellectual disabilities have been subjected to the same state testing requirements as the students who do not have these disabilities. Have you considered the devastating psychological impact on a child who has taken a test that they were not intellectually capable of passing? I have personally observed how it negatively impacted the self-esteem, produced anxiety, sadness, shame, and a sense of failure in some students. Please reevaluate your
We'd like to know how you would like to discuss this. I do believe that there will be some information provided. Dr. Mills, is that correct?
It is.
All right. So we will be hearing some information from the administration in just a little bit here in the meeting. And would you like to have the administration respond to the concerns that have been voiced by the persons who submitted their written statements?
I think that would be best.
All right.
Do we need a motion, or can we?
Is that agreeable with other members of the board? Mr. Boykin is nodding yes.
No objection.
No objection from Mr. Breen. None from me. Okay, Ms. Powell, Mrs. Barnes, Mrs. Boyette. Okay, thank you very much. So we will now move to the discussion, information, and action items. The first one is regarding facilities projects for the 1920 and the 5 and 10-year facilities plan. Dr. Mills?
Madam Chair, I'll share the screen real quickly, but I know Dr. Williams is remote on the call, as well as Mr. Letchworth, and they can share a little bit of information about this process and where we are right now. Let me see if I can do that real quick. There we go. Dr. Williams and you and Mr. Letchworth want to share a little bit about what this entails?
Did all of the members of the board get the revised
We sent that
copy?
by email, yes ma'am. There was
Okay.
a version issue between them.
All right.
Two, and they do look identical.
Yes, sir. At this time, Madam Chair and board members, what is our 5 and 10-year plan from 2020 to 2030. And it also includes various different projects that we have ongoing at this time that we're working on budgets for. Some of them being lead remediation and some inspections that were done via the health department. And that updated as more of those are done throughout our schools. It's kind of comprehensive. It does cover athletics. It does cover facilities. It covers a broad range of aspects throughout our buildings. Any questions on the 5 and 10 year?
I have a question, Mr. Letchworth.
Mrs.
Yes,
Barnes?
ma'am.
I don't know a lot about HVACs, but I was looking at the plans, and I wanted to know what would be the longevity of our HVAC valves and controls. It seems like they're pretty costly, and I didn't know whether they were to last 10 years, 5 years, because I think about 4 different schools have to have them replaced this year, and they're fairly expensive.
Yes, ma'am. We just finished Hunt a couple years ago, which lasted us a little over 30 years. So usually between 25 and 30 years of age, that's going to be the expectancy we have currently in operation.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that's the dates beside of each one that are listed as they are represented.
Okay.
Mr. Letchworth, I noticed in looking at the signage for ADA that there was a variance in the cost. Can you tell me why there's a price differential for the ADA signage?
Yes, ma'am. Each school is laid out differently, so if there's a connected order, you have to have signage in a close proximity, so that would add or delete signage depending on the size of the building and the layout.
Okay.
Board members, one thing I would suggest is that this information, again, we've tried to tighten it up as we've gone. We put some in there that are what would be considered priorities. Remember, we put those in red if there was money we had available, and we talked some about that. But I do think at the start of the year, we need to begin to work through our facilities plan and look at where we are and have those conversations with the county commissioners as well as we plan ahead for what our needs are and where we are. This is what's reported at DPI on their website for facility plan needs, capital needs for school systems. So it's updated every 5 years, but I think it's time for us to start planning and talking about, based on where we are and what our facilities need, to have those conversations in those joint meetings.
Okay. Are there other questions or comments in regard to this 5-10-year plan?
I did want to ask, the adding the vestibules, that's a part of the controlling traffic or
Traffic into buildings.
security kind
It
of.
is.
How many of our, I know some of the schools already have that, and some would adapt to it easily, but some like Barnes is more difficult. And
Yeah, at the time many of our buildings were built, you know, the issue wasn't amount of the security and safety issues we're dealing with now. Schools were meant to be open, not so much inaccessible from the outside. So rigidly. So Mr. Letchworth maybe will tell you how many we've got that would need vegetables. I'm trying to.
I mean, just a general, I know some of them. Mr. Lee.
I would have on the plan, but they're represented at each school site as to whether that vestibule entrance would need to be added and the cost to do that.
Yeah, most do. Most would need it.
I
The
remember,
exception of fewer facilities, that would be all of them with the exception of the newest ones.
I remember offhand, it was Barnes and Frederick Douglass that we were going to be adding vestibules.
Yeah, the newer middle schools have vegetables in them in a couple elementary schools.
And they were probably put there for energy efficiency more than security when they were put there.
Could have been.
That is correct.
Yep. Other questions? Again,
Are these numbers, are they actual quotes or are they estimates?
These are estimates in a living document in terms of what we have to do. So it's, we look at it each year trying to, it will change by the time you print it. And of course, it's a running total to kind of give us an estimate of what we're looking at. So no, I wouldn't dare say these are working numbers we could go and do. But that would be part of the process once those are prioritized and you have some of the money to do. And yes, we'd have to do that. You're right.
And they are based on numbers that we are already doing projects for. So like a roofing project or anybody in the neighboring county around us doing similar projects, whatever the latest quoted price is per square foot or per material cost, that's updated on our plan as we go.
Are there other questions or comments? This is an information-only item.
It is,
So,
Madam Chair.
as stated by the superintendent, this is a breathing, living, moving
It does.
document that changes as time goes on. So, thank you very much. Final forms, products and services for Wilson County Schools athletic programs. Is this Dr. Williams?
Dr. Williams, let's cover that one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, I just wanted to bring to your attention a final forms product and services for Wilson County Schools athletics programs, high school athletic programs. Final forms product is a athletic form system, and it's used to assist with the collection, verifying, and the distribution of athletic forms. There are many athletic forms documents and several items that need to be collected, verified, and submitted for athletics. And this particular product houses all of those. It also will verify those when there's an athlete who needs another document signed, a physical form, a concussion form, and it assists in making sure that we are accurate with our information to be in compliance with North Carolina High School Athletic Association guidelines. The cost for the final forms is $4 per athlete and coach. And the total cost for the first year of service is approximately, we've got a quote for $4,204, but we will be billed for this product at the end of each season. So however many athletes we have at the end of each season is what we'll be billed for. And an athlete will not be billed twice. So if you have an athlete that plays 3 sports, we're billed one time for that athlete. Same thing with coaches. Billed once for a coach. If they coach 3 sports, we're billed once for that coach. The collection and maintaining of these documents is a tremendous job for athletic directors and coaches to make sure that we have all of our details in check before we go out for athletic events and athletic competition, so that we are again in compliance with North Carolina High School Athletic Association, and that we do not have any issues with players being out without proper forms. And it also houses concussion forms. We need to maintain those concussion forms for a period of time. And Mr. Tillman is on the call, and I'll have him to speak to that. But it also houses that for us so that we can maintain those copies for that period of time. Mr. Tillman, I would turn it over to you at this time for anything that you wanted to add for final forms.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. Final forms is going to, like Dr. Williams stated previously, it's going to be a valuable tool in probably keeping us in compliance, because we have to be in compliance with the physical forms, with coaches' certification, and most importantly, with our concussion forms. It is recommended that we keep on file the concussion forms from 3 to 5 years. By doing this electronically will be a huge advantage and eliminate a lot of paper, a lot of file folders, a lot of filing cabinets that we're storing that information in now. And also, it will be so available to and so valuable to the parents, because we can do the forms electronically with them. Those parents do not have internet service. We would bring them to the school and get them in the computer lab, or we would manually put the information in for them. So like Dr. Williams stated, it is a huge task in trying to collect paperwork for students and from parents, and this way we could do everything electronically. I would hope that with the money that we're spending for this, that we could save a lot of it in the use of paper and ink cartridge and those kinds of things.
Mr. Tillman, is this system uniformly being used and recommended by the High School Athletic Association, or is this a system that you have found to be best in keeping with the needs of being in compliance with the High School Athletic Association?
Yes, ma'am. Every form that's required by the North Carolina High School Athletic Association and even our local forms will be stored in this information. And yes, the North Carolina High School Athletic Association has strongly recommended that we all go to this. Fike and Hunt is a member of the Big East Conference, and all those schools in Nash County are already using final forms. And also Bedingfield is in the 2A Eastern Plain Conference, and several of those schools in that conference are previously using the final forms. So yes, ma'am, it is encouraged.
Okay, this is an information-only item because it does not meet the threshold.
That's correct.
But is this a contract that we're going to have to have board attorney
It will be reviewed by the attorney. We wanted to share it with the board as a good news kind of informational item, so you would be aware of it when you heard about it. But this is something that would be a good thing to add to our toolbox.
I'm real excited that it has the concussion form and that it allows for notification when students are coming back, because that's been a topic of conversation that we have had in the past about the notification and making sure that the students are ready to come back and ready for academics. Other comments or any questions, members of the board?
Madam Chair, I was very pleased at the cost factor. Just amazing, just $4 per athlete.
It is.
I think it's money well spent.
It is reasonable, very reasonable for what it offers.
All right. If there is nothing else, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, contract requiring board notification.
Let me share the screen, board members, so I don't.
All right.
We have one contract that requires notification the board exceeds the $90,000 limit, and that is for Soft Choice, and that's the Microsoft renewals for servers, excuse me, and all the WCS Office accounts, Microsoft Office accounts. Excuse me, this is notification. Notification.
It's under.
It's under the $90,000. It's $70,254.74. Again, that soft choice is the business, and it's for the renewal for Microsoft licensure for servers and all office accounts. It's an annual thing.
It's an annual thing, so it really does not have much in way of change, but is this going to have to go to the attorney for,
I think this is off-state contract,
okay,
and so typically those have not.
all right. And that was under the threshold, so
Yes,
this was an
yes, ma'am.
information
Sorry about the
item.
confusion, that was mine reading ahead.
All right, any other questions or comments, members of the board? Dr. Mills?
Those are, the next would be action items.
All right. The budget amendments, 2020, 2021 budget amendments.
Yes, Mr. Stanley, our finance officer, is on the Zoom call. We have budget amendments for the State Public School Fund, Capital Outlay Fund, and Local Special Revenue Fund. We do need board approval. This is to make these appropriations. And so I'll scroll through the first one and let Mr. Stanley share with us as we go.
Can you hear me, Dr. Mills?
Yes, sir.
You want me to go, or you want to go ahead?
Go right ahead, start with 103.
Primarily on this one, it was reductions due to the number of charter school students that increased. There was 41 students that increased from the planning allotments to now, so they're taking money back from us primarily. And that's primarily what this one is all about, is rectifying the budget on that situation.
Questions on 103? Okay.
On the capital outlay one,
403.
This one is getting the funds right with what the county has. I was under the impression we had $2 million as of July 1, and we actually had around 1.7 million, whatever it comes to, minus that figure right there. It's what we had, so this is just getting it right with the county.
Okay. Okay, and the last one is the.
Just let me, I don't have a question about the numbers, but the number on the second page had an E. Was that just a typo? I assumed it was.
For what, 403E?
Which one?
403E.
Yes, it looks like an extra character.
The E is real close to the 3, so on the keyboard side.
Good catch.
All right.
And the last is Local Special Revenue Fund, amendment number 803.
Yeah, on this one, that 400,000, we thought, well, we weren't sure in July on the 21st Century Grant if we were going to get a check for that amount or if it was going to run through the federal programs that stays at DPI. We found out it was run through the programs at DPI like our normal Title I fund does and IDA 6B handicap funds do. So this is getting the budget again corrected. Since we're not getting those funds, this really gets it taken out of the budget, and should be one coming next month for the federal piece on these funds.
So it'll show back up, it's just been moved.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mercer?
I move that the full board approve budget amendments 103 State Public School Fund, 403 Capital Outlay Fund, and 803 Local Special Revenue Funds as recommended by administration.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Mercer, seconded by Mr. Breen, that the full board approve budget amendment 103 State Public School Fund, 403 Capital Outlay Fund, and 803 the Local Special Revenue Fund. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyette?
if you would look back, Mr. Stanley, on 103, and at the very last of the revenues, there's a AR 27 October subpay. I understand that. initial allotment for digital learning. I understand that. Then there's AR number 28, and there's no funding beside of that.
Number 28.
So it's additional funds for CRF, WIF.
I think it's 196,000.
It's just showing.
Ms. Boyette, it's 196,000. It just got offline.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
I see what they did, push it down from the state.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, please record your vote in regard to the approval of the budget amendments. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Borkin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Now we're at contracts that require board approval.
Madam Chair, you've got 3 contracts that require board approval that exceed the $90,000 limit. I know Dr. Wilson and Mr. Mayor are on the call. The first is for Encore. There's the business name. The service is for ViewSonic document cameras, 290 of those. That contract amount would be for $100,611.88. And the quote is below it. Those are the cameras that allow that whatever's placed underneath can be displayed on the projector on the TV screen from the teaching station. That's one. The second contract is also with Encore, and it is about the antennas to expand the outdoor access points coverage. That's the quote that we sent you because of the late notification from the state that we were eligible to get additional monies because other systems had not used those monies. And so that quote was sent to you separately, and that was to add those antennas. And I'm trying to see if I've got that file to pull up. Linda, do you have that one when you pull it up? I've got the next one. I don't have that one. I'll stop sharing. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, go ahead. Ms. Horson's gonna pull that one up.
Dr. Mills?
Yes, ma'am.
On the page where we're talking about the ViewSonic document cameras, are these replacement cameras? I see there's only 290. I don't know how many pictures we have, but,
It's more than 290, you're right. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Mayor, or Dr.
so,
Wilson, I'll respond
are
to
they
that.
just replacement, or are we trying to get one in everybody's hands? Tell me what they're.
Yes,
how
ma'am.
they're-
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Ms. Boyette, we are trying to get everyone a new document camera. The document cameras that we currently have are about 10 to 12 years old. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, this has been a hot item. And so we were able to secure 290. So that's why we come tonight with the 290 secured.
Okay, thank you.
And then Ms. Horson has had the document for the quote that was received after the packets went out due to the timing, and that is for the outdoor access antennas.
And so that bottom line price was $92,000, how much?
$249.25. Just over the threshold. Again, we're fortunate to get the money because someone else probably didn't use theirs up, so we can add some additional equipment, but the timing has to be encumbered and done by December 30th. So that's why we went ahead and sent out the packets with that pending, because we didn't want to miss out on the funding. So I appreciate your understanding on that. That's why we're having to piece this one in. Any questions on?
So will there be
those
enough
two?
antennas to meet the needs of all that we are hoping for? That's the outdoor access
I think
points.
these are geared towards outdoor projects, so we would strengthen some of that. Mr. Mayo can share a little bit more about that.
Yes, if you remember from our November board meeting, you approved the outdoor access points, which we were excited about. We worked with the principals on the placement of where each antenna was going to go. But with the additional funding that we requested, this allowed for those access points to be even more extension. So we will have each campus will be well lit with Wi-Fi, which gives us an increased security for especially our sports fields that have limited capabilities in our rural areas as well.
Okay. Members of the board, you have the contracts. There are 3.
I've got one more to share with you.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Fish.
Is this the Department of Insurance one?
It is.
Okay.
Let me go back to my document. Hold on. Too many screens. There we go. And the last one is about the, let me get back up to the main, it's for the Department of Insurance, property insurance, and that contract amount is for $117,460. And these are quotes of 3% or 5% total insured values, and we're looking at a 3% increase based on the updates of our construction and content costs. This was recommended by, it's privilege provided by DPIs now through Department of Insurance. And so this shows you the premium amounts with the adjustments, and so we need to bring that back to you because it's over the threshold. But this is the same types of coverage we've had in the past.
Okay. Members of the board, do you have any comments or questions?
Okay.
Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion regarding the contracts that are over the threshold that need to be approved.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell?
I move that the board approve the contracts for Encore for the 290 ViewSonic document cameras, for the contract for Encore for the antennas to expand the outdoor access points coverage, and the contract of North Carolina Department of Insurance for the property insurance.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Powell, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, that we approve the contracts as presented from Encore for 290 ViewSonic document cameras, another contract with Encore for antennas to expand the outdoor access points coverage, and the North Carolina Department of Insurance for property insurance. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
I'm trying to, aye.
Thank you. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next is the revised 2020-2021 traditional and early college calendars. Dr. Mills? Or is that going to be Dr.
Madam
Wilson?
Chair, I'll let Dr. Wilson take over for calendars.
All right, Madam Chair and members of the board, you have on your précis, the first 4 bullets share information as to why we need to revise the calendar. I'll just go step by step, just a little bit of information there. You have behind the précis 4 different four calendars, and they're really 2 different ones. You have the traditional calendar that will show up on the website, and then the one behind it would be the working document that we use. And then you have the early college calendar that would be on the website, and then the working document that we use to try to keep up with our number of days and so forth.
Right.
On the first one, on the traditional calendar and the early college one, you'll remember that we were out of school on November the 12th due to inclement weather. And so that day was an annual leave, or that day was a non-instructional day. So we were recommending that day become an annual leave day and remove the March 19th, that was an annual leave day, and place it into the 12th, and which would make the 19th an instructional day. And then also on the early college calendar, what that would look like is that November the 12th would become an annual leave day because April the 1st was the annual leave day on the early college. So that's just switching the 2 out. So the for both the early college and the traditional. When we were also reviewing the calendar, we noticed that December the 23rd and December the 28th did not match on the traditional and the early college. And when we're thinking about payroll, while that may not make too much difference to our school educators in the schools, it does make a difference in payroll. So we're trying to align those days. Just, it's not going to make a lot of difference to anybody outside of the payroll.
All right. Do you have any questions, members of the board, or comments?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Breen?
that doesn't affect anybody's check, right?
No, it does
Okay,
not.
just
No, we're
payroll
just,
itself as a unit.
correct,
Okay.
yes. It does not change anybody's, we're just switching a holiday and an annual leave day to be the same so that when the staff and payroll makes that work. But that's a good question. We don't want to mess with anybody's checks.
No. Okay. Are there other comments or questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes? Ms. Boyette?
Dr. Wilson, when I'm looking at February, and maybe you told us this earlier, but if you did, I forgot. I see we've got the 12th is a remote learning day, and then the 15th is a work day. Is that correct?
On the traditional calendar, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
The 15th is currently an optional work day.
Okay, all right. My question was, since the grading period, the report cards go out on March the 22nd, would it be feasible to move that remote learning day to the 18th and the optional work day to the 19th to align it with the report cards? And in January, we've been out, you know, for some holidays. Can you help me understand the thinking there?
Okay, so we didn't move too many others. I understand what you're saying. So originally, when that day was a work day or an annual leave day, it seemed to work out just fine. So I do understand what you're saying is the moving February the 15th from an optional day and make it an instructional day and make March the 19th an optional work day. Is that what you're saying, Ms. Boyette?
Yeah, yes, but I was suggesting that the remote learning day on the 12th, unless there was a reason for that, couldn't the remote learning day be on the March the 18th if we needed the remote learning day?
Yeah.
I could, you know, you had the remote learning, or we had the remote learning day there, and then the optional work day. I guess, I'm not sure what the reasoning was, but if we needed them, if we moved them both to March and made both days regular instructional days.
I think the reasoning behind.
Make the flow of instruction better.
Yeah, I think that's is a good conversation piece to have now. Some of the rationale for having those staggered like they are in February was that was a long run from January all the way to March, and that's feedback we got. You know, we've talked about that over the last couple of years, and so that was giving us some buffer in between there to go. Usually when we see some of the worst weather and see some of the other things going on too, but with all the remote going on now, it wouldn't be a bad thing to take a look at this like you're talking about with some of the restructuring. There's no problem with that at all, but that's kind of what was in there in February, because that is a long month from January through.
So what you're saying is that if we do this now, we may come back and review and possibly revise the calendar again later, or?
I would say if you want to make any changes, let's make them now.
Yes.
And I think because people need to plan, and it has been very confusing from all the remote and schedules and some of the other things we've had to handle this year. So if the board's interested in doing that, you know, I'd say go ahead and do it now. We can get it out, and that would allow people to plan. But I have no issues with looking at moving February, moving those days around because they were in there as placeholders for some of the things we'd seen in the past with weather and a long spell between January all the way to break.
Yes.
Members of the board, is the suggestion that is being made with the administration saying now would be a good time to address those points. What is your pleasure? Would you like to have them do a flip at this point in time with those days in February to replace with the timing as suggested in March?
Is the suggestion just the remote learning day, or is it the remote learning day and the optional teacher work?
I think it's the
Both.
remote learning day
Both.
and the
Well-
optional. Is that not correct, Mrs. Boyette?
The 18th and 19th.
Yeah, that's what I would say, but the remote learning day is not of great importance to me. Getting that work day down in front of that report card is the.
I agree with that.
Okay. So,
I thought the same thing, but not smart enough to explain it.
so would you like to see the remote learning day stay the same in February, but move that optional day down to March, either on the 18th or the 19th? Is that the date that you were suggesting, Mrs. Boyette?
Yes, I'm suggesting moving that the 15th to the 19th of March. 15th of February, instructional day, to March 19th, make that the work day.
I agree with that. I go along with that.
All right, I'm hearing a consensus that we're gonna move those days, that optional work day from the 15th of February to the 19th of March.
That's what I understand.
Dr. Wilson?
So this is one thing that I'm thinking, and I could be wrong on this, so Ms. Boyette, please correct me if I am. But when I look at I know exactly what you're talking about, because I remember as a classroom teacher and I'm trying to get those report cards ready, I needed some time plus the weekend to be able to do those things. And so I'm wondering if it would be effective to be able to move that optional workday to the 12th rather than the 19th. And the reason that I'm thinking that is because the 22nd is the day that the report cards go out. So if teachers are really going to be working on the report cards, they're going to probably be doing so maybe on the 12th. Well, I know that the end of the grading period is on the 15th. I get that.
Right.
But we all know that you have to start those grades a couple of days before so that you can get them into power school and so forth. So that would be, I see teachers working on their report cards on the 12th more so than they would on the 19th, because the report cards have already been finalized and had to be printed, is what I'm thinking.
That's fine. I hadn't thought about having to print them, but you're right, the 19th is too late to print them, so, the 12th, that sounds better to me too.
I thought I had something on my screen in the yellow dot.
The yellow dot.
I kept thinking.
Well, since
Sorry.
But that does make sense.
Well, back in the day when we used to have to write out our own report cards,
Yes.
the 19th would have been a great day.
Yes. All right, but with the end of the 9 weeks coming on that Monday, so then it's just a matter of 1 or 2 grades that would have to be
Yes.
factored in, okay?
Yes.
All right. Members of the board, are you comfortable with that switch of moving that optional work day from the 15th of February to now the 12th of March?
I am.
Yes.
All
Yes,
right.
I
The
am.
new rationale, yes.
Yes, okay, so that's a consensus, but we need this is an action item, so we actually need a motion in terms of, if that's the only other changes that you're looking for in the calendar, board members. So,
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
If there are no other questions, I move that we approve the 2021 traditional calendar with a change of the optional workday and from the 19th, I think we said, to the 12th. Am I correct?
You're moving it from the 15th of February
From
to
the
the
15th
12th,
to the, yes,
12th of March.
to
And,
the
and is that,
March 12th.
and is that motion inclusive of the other changes that the administration is recommending of flipping those work days, instructional days with the
Yes, with those
optional
changes
days?
as well.
Yes, okay.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by, was that Mrs. Powell or Mrs. Boyette? Who made the second?
That, Ms. Boyette.
Okay, it has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, that the changes in the 2020-2021 traditional and early college calendars be approved with the change of also of the optional workday moving from the 15th of February to the 12th of March. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Borkin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We always end up making many changes in the calendar, and I'm hoping that,
I'm just glad you wanted to go ahead and fix it today, because we have another calendar that'll be coming up soon.
okay. Then we're going to move on then to the next item, which is COVID-19 updates. Dr. Mills?
Madam Chair, we have a document to pull up just to give you some information about some of our numbers and where we are as we head into the next session about the transition plan, and just to give you an update from all the various parts we've had to handle lately, as you've seen in the public.
It is showing that it will.
We're going to share the document. Hold on. Let me stop my sharing. Hold on.
Okay.
Now you can.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
So, Madam Chair and members of the board, Dr. Williams and Dr. Parker and myself and Dr. Mills have been working on this document about the COVID-19 updates, and we have some information we would like to share, and the top section is by Dr. Williams.
Dr. Williams? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I just wanted to share some updates from our COVID positive cases and contacts. Currently, we have 33 active positive cases. 26 of those are staff, 7 of those are students. Keep in mind for our tracker that an active case is any case that is within the last 14 days. There are 78 staff contacts and 132 student contacts from those positive cases within Wilson County schools. So that is, we get notified of a positive case and we contact trace within our schools, departments, county office buildings, and those are the contacts from those specific cases. There will be at least 104 staff members and 155 that are currently quarantined from displaying symptoms, positive cases, and contacts within and outside of Wilson County schools. We keep up with that on a school tracker, and that is updated constantly. So when I say at least, that means that, you know, for certain, the number of staff positive cases and the number of staff contacts, we have at least 104, but we certainly will have some updates with, you know, a staff member or student who may have been symptomatic, or we just got notified that they were a contact outside of school. And we're continuing to refine those processes to make sure that we keep the best numbers possible. little bit of data from the day after Thanksgiving. Since November the 27th, we've had 29 positive staff cases and 8 positive student cases. And since November the 27th, there have been 96 staff contacts and 233 student contacts from those positive cases within Wilson County Schools. A breakdown of the active quarantine is located, the document was located there. And again, just wanted to point out that these numbers are reflective of what are on our school trackers, but you know, I'm in the process of making sure that you know, we continuously checking this information against our COVID tracker that we have for the county as well. So they're working documents, and we try to keep them updated daily. I will tell you that every time we receive a positive case, that case is contact traced at every single school. The health department, we have a great relationship. We speak multiple times in the course of a day, and we share that information with them, and we contact trace at every school. If we could go back to the schools and the departments that are quarantined or have recently been quarantined. So our schools and our departments that have experienced quarantine currently, Garner's, Vincent Bynum Daniels Learning Center, and Darden are on remote learning through the break. They had a positive case at their school, and Vincent Bynum had two, one day and one the next day. And due to the number of staff that were impacted by being contacts, the decision was made to move them to remote learning. Spate Middle School, Leewood Elementary School, and Jones Elementary School returned last week for being on remote, and the same situation applies there. They had a positive case or cases in the school, and as a result, it identified a number of contacts within the building that were staff members that were needed to safely operate the school. Barnes Elementary School, school nutrition staff, they were quarantined until today. Today was the last day of that quarantine. Bedingfield High School, the school nutrition staff, they are quarantined until December the 16th. And Wells Elementary School, school nutrition staff, they were quarantined until December the 15th. There's also a link to the dashboard, and on the dashboard, the Wilson County Schools COVID tracker is linked to the dashboard, and updates as cases are put in. You know, from a process standpoint, as we contact trace throughout the course of a day, the first thing that happens in the morning is I enter those numbers into our Wilson County Schools COVID tracker. The reason for that is that we have it set up to where it asks certain questions. Has the health department been notified? Isolation information been shared? Cleaning information been shared? Communication sent out to the school and school community. It takes through the course of an evening to get all of that done. So to make sure it's reporting accurately to the dashboard, I wait until first thing in the morning to put those cases from the day before in so that all of those items can be taken care of prior to putting them into the dashboard. Are there any questions for me on this particular portion? And I do have Ms. Ellen is on the call, and Ms. Manning is with her as well on the call. And again, work tremendously close to the health department as we go through this process on a daily basis.
I have a question for Ms. Ellen. Who handles the contact tracing? Is that through Wilson County School staff, or is that through Health Department staff?
I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself.
That's all right.
So and Ms. Manning is sitting here with me, and she is our environmental health director who's been working very closely with Dr. Williams. And it's the principals and the teachers in consultation with Angie.
Okay. Madam Chair.
Mr. Mercer?
The contact tracing, I can understand them doing that within the school on who they had classes with and so forth. But does it include people from outside of the school that may have visited or anyone of that nature?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mercer. Anyone within the school facility that the positive case came in contact with is identified as a contact and notified as a contact. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think one thing to point out is that the biggest issue, and I've shared this with some, is that the biggest issue we've had has been with the contacts more so than the cases in terms of the implications for staffing the school. And I think you're seeing that in the media about school systems making different decisions and looking at that. But the contacts themselves can range from a classroom to some different areas or administrative areas. And, you know, we have pulled different people to cover areas and pulled different people, classrooms, child nutrition. But, you know, as I've said, you know, it's not a one-to-one ratio between a contact and it being a simple kind of fix to manage the schools. And so when we've gone to remote learning, it's been more about the contacts have impacted the school to an extent that we can't cover the staffing to maintain schools we know it. And so that's where you've seen a lot of the remote learning go into effect in our system as well as others, because of the disproportionate effect that has across a grade level, across the school system, across the school individually. So I think our folks will work very closely, Dr. Williams especially, with the health department, and Ms. Manning and Ms. Ellen are really great folks to bounce things off of. And what we're seeing is that, especially since Thanksgiving, you know, we've seen an uptick, and we've seen the burst, if you will, since the holiday in terms of our numbers, and most of those are the contact impacts that we've seen, which have caused us to have to go remote.
Well, I had an interest because I've been in all the schools in the last few weeks. And not that I suspected it. I have no reason to think that I've been infected by it, but I was there.
When you show that the school nutrition staff for both Barnes and Wells are out, does this mean that nutrition staff from other schools are covering those sites, particularly since the elementary schools are in a face-to-face environment?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Williams could share some more about that.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. Ms. Talton is on the call as well and has done a tremendous job of reassigning staff as needed. Typically what that has entailed is taking staff from curbside services and moving them into a school to be able to maintain breakfast and lunch service at the school that is without a school nutrition staff at that time. But again, she's done a tremendous job of allocating the proper personnel to make sure that feeding doesn't stop at the schools that are in session. And we still provide that curbside service. We just may need to redirect them for a few days to a different curbside pickup so that staff can move into a school to make sure that the food service is uninterrupted.
Thank you very much, Ms. Talton, for that continued effort on behalf of feeding the children of the system.
Madam Chair and board members, we also wanted to share a little bit of information about the substitute data from covering classrooms, because it's not just a straightforward issue as well. So Dr. Parker, I think, is on the call. He can share a little bit about this.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. As you recall, a few months ago, the board had the foresight to reach out to substitutes with the advent of preparing for remote learning. About 124 substitutes were contacted. About 104 of those substitutes replied to our initial survey. 18 replied no and willing to be served as a substitute, and 86 of those folks replied yes. Now, out of those 86, 66 have completed the training as designated by the board in order to prepare to be more effective as a substitute in the remote learning environment. And so as we move forward, we did a report starting on October 22nd when students started till a couple of days ago. We wanted to give you an idea of the amount of response that our substitutes have given. So what you see, and it's broken down by school, is that first column is the total number of subs needed that is requested in the system between those two dates. The second column is the number filled and the percentage. And then that fourth column is the amount unfilled per school. But we also wanted to make sure that you understood that a lot of these substitute requests were filled by teacher assistants. So, and we entered that data to make sure that you understood that principals sometimes are having some difficulty getting substitutes to answer the call, and they have to find a teacher assistant to come and take over that class. So as you can go down, if you look, you have to look at the teacher assistant. If it's a significant number, you have to subtract that from the number filled, and your number of percentage filled goes down accordingly. So if you go down to the very bottom number, the raw number for substitutes being filled is at 82%. But if you look at the 342 positions filled, 66 of them were actually filled by a TA. And we definitely appreciate teacher assistants filling in and helping out whenever they can. We discussed this matter at a principals meeting about a week or so ago. They applauded the efforts of the teacher assistants, the fact that they have relationships with their students, and they actually get a lot of things done, when they're called upon. So do you have any questions about this data?
And one thing I'd piggyback on Dr. Parker's comments is that, when our teacher assistants are stepping in and filling those roles, one, that's valuable, but two, that means they're not assisting the teachers in their classrooms as well. So they're being pulled to go in and cover those classrooms, and that means our teachers are working shorthanded for some of the things they rely on and plan for during a time when they're needing more and more time to plan and do the things they need to do already. So it is a strain. And you can, it may not just, the numbers just don't show that relationship as well as the conversation does about it. So we felt like this is important for you to be aware of. It is similar everywhere, but again, our folks are doing a lot of different things.
And I assume they're finding a way with the restrictions and distancing that the teaching assistants frequently manage small groups or individual help with students.
It's challenging. It's really challenging for our folks.
That's being taken away from the regular classroom.
I think your folks will tell you they're stretching. So I just felt like it was important for you to see the pattern beyond the numbers. The numbers are one thing, and there's certainly things we keep track of and talk about, but there's other pieces at play that I think everyone needs to know about.
It's kind of like pay attention to the trend lines, not the headlines.
Yes, it's very complex in terms of the impacts we're seeing everywhere.
Dr. Mills.
Yes, ma'am.
I was looking at Herm. They have a large number of TAs that had to be used, as well as Vic, Winstead even. They're not having to be pulled from our disabled classrooms, are they? Or our special needs classrooms?
No, they're not coming. They're not coming out of those classrooms.
Good.
No, but you do see where it's harder to get subs sometimes and patterns, and then again, people are filling in and helping where they can, but it puts a strain on both sides of the equation. So, Madam Chair, that's what we kind of wanted to share, just some information that's hard to get out in a bite that could be easily interpreted and not misinterpreted, but there's a lot at play.
All right. If there are no other questions in regard to or comments in regard to the COVID-19 update, we'll move to the 20.
Madam Chair, I've got a
Mr.
couple
Breen.
of comments.
Okay,
Well,
sorry.
really questions. Do we have any data regarding our custodial staffs or bus drivers?
I can answer a little bit of that, and Dr. Williams and Mr. Harvey's on the call too, but we are on, and Mr. Letchworth as well, we are on the last bit of our temporary kind of custodians or filling custodians. We've pulled some people. We're at the point now we've pulled some people to cover some buildings from our existing staff, but we've used our sub-custodians and all as well during this process, and that number is stretched very, very thin right to the border. Bus drivers, Dr. Williams and Mr. Harvey can share more about that. I do not think they're as stretched, but they are getting there, and that might be a generalization beyond what they'll share with you. But Dr. Williams or Mr. Harvey?
Yes, sir. I'll speak to that. In regards to the drivers, Mr. Harvey's on the call as well. We had two, and Mr. Harvey, make sure you correct me, over the weekend, our contact tracing for the weekend, we had two drivers that we needed to find substitutes for or get their routes covered. And we have had one or two prior to that. We have not seen with our drivers the amount of contacts and isolation and self-isolation and quarantines that we have with our custodial staff with the custodial staff that with subs that we were already struggling to get in a regular basis. Mr. Harvey, are those numbers correct? I think two prior to this weekend and two this weekend, and maybe one or two of those may be back.
Yes, sir. Those numbers are accurate. We like you said, we have had those cases, but we have some that are due back on the 20th. Two of the four that you mentioned are due back on the 20th.
Mr. Letchworth, anything else in regards to the custodial staff? I know we've talked at length about our sub-custodian pool being stretched in. And this does also include, let's say we have a routine vacancy at a school where a custodian has resigned, moved to a different position. Our substitutes are having to cover those areas because of the importance and the need for our cleaning and sanitation. So we're trying to make sure that we keep someone in the schools at all times. But Mr. Letchworth, do you have anything else to add in regards to our sub-custodian pool?
No, you're correct with saying that we are using all of our subs at this current time.
So it's right on the bubble, Mr. Breen and board members, of coverage for many of our core areas that we need, as well as, we do see an additional strain on bus drivers as we're doing the EOC testing with the high schools back in, because that's been an additional set of routes on top of the elementary middle. And we looked at that, and that was part of the planning. Had to go into play. It wasn't just as simple as dividing out the students. We had to look at the transportation routes. Many of our students drove, according to the high school principals, or dropped off versus the bus routes, but we still had to run them. So we had to plan for that. So it's been very tight to try to get to break.
With what you stated earlier with the move back to remote starting on Thursday through the 22nd to break, do you foresee any major issues with substitutes or food and nutrition staff at this time?
Ms. Talton's on the call. She might want to talk about the child nutrition piece that getting us to break.
Because it seems like a short time, but that's still a long way. That's Tuesday and Wednesday, because it won't start until Thursday. So we have 2 more days before we go back into remote.
Mary Catherine, do you want to share anything about that?
Sure. Madam Chair and the board, just briefly, we have had a struggle the past couple of weeks, as you saw on the slides, with the cafeterias that have had to be emptied and sanitized and restaffed. However, I do think with many of our staff being able to return from quarantine this week, that we, fingers crossed, will be okay to get through the 22nd. But at least we will have our staff back to be able to utilize them appropriately and move them where necessary.
So going back to remote on Thursday, that means that it's just going to be the curbside pickup, correct?
That's correct. And we'll move into basically what we do every Wednesday. So every Wednesday, all 23 sites are open, and we'll just continue that on until we're out for break.
I had a question. I know at one point you were having trouble with finding the lids for the curbside containers or the containers. Are you okay with that now?
We are, and we were able to secure some for daily use, and whenever we're sending home meals to be consumed same day, it does tend to be a tad bit easier than sending home multiple days of meals. The containers don't have to be the same. What is the right word? The same density, maybe. They don't have to be able to hold up quite as long, I guess I should say, when the students are going to be able to take them right home and consume. So we were able to secure what we needed to do that day to day.
Okay. Are you getting any support from the CHU program since the COVID? I haven't heard much.
To be honest, someone else may want to answer that question. CHU doesn't directly communicate with us. However, we do appreciate the support that they're offering on the weekends.
Okay.
Ms. Barnes, the CHU program operates separately, as Ms. Talton says, and our counselors at the schools are working with that. And that would be for the weekends, not during the school day.
Right.
Are there other questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Powell?
I have just a comment. I just want to thank Dr. Williams, Mr. Letchworth, thank Ms. Allen, Mary Catherine, just the whole staff for how you're working together, your transparency. I thank you for that, and forthcoming during this COVID-19 and allowing us to also have the COVID-19 tracker. I've looked at that on several occasions. It's been really helpful. And I love how y'all are pulling together to get this done, because there's so many people out there that are uncomfortable, and people that are suffering, and people that are just not knowing how they're going to go from one day to the next. And I appreciate you all working together closely to get this information out and putting our minds at ease, letting us know that you do care. Thank you.
I'd like to second that and say you might want to try a career in juggling if you ever get out of school. Learn how to throw things up and catch them before they fall.
We'll let that come after they have retired from us, not before. No change in professions at this point. But
and in that mix, I also would like Madam Chair to include Mills, because he has been so faithful giving us our updates, and that has been truly, truly helpful to know in advance some of the things we need to know to make decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. And with board members, with that information, if you're okay, we'll transition into the transition plan.
Okay.
That's about as plenty as I can do.
So that was listed as an action item, so there's no action that's needed for that, is it?
You're correct.
You're right.
You're right. Missed that one. Good job, Ms. Barnes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Mills, transition.
Do you
share the screen?
share it?
Let's share the screen. Make sure we're clear. Okay, them all.
Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you want me to share it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. There we go.
Well, who's on it?
You got it? So this is where Google. I'm not gonna say anything.
I think y'all have done a wonderful
Just-
job
just-
toggling back and forth.
Just a
anyway.
moment. There you go. I got it.
There's a lag too. That's what throws you off.
That's right. Okay. Okay.
see your 8,000 tabs open.
I don't
That's
want
always
to talk
good
about
know.
it.
All right.
That's how my mind works. Okay. All right, so, board members, you had in your packets the transition plan from fall semester to spring semester. And so we're going to go through this, and if you have any questions, just let us know as we proceed. So you will see that we have some documents in the, as we move forward, and our supporting documents. We've stuck with the guiding principles throughout this whole process, so you can see the things that we hold near and dear to us. This particular document is the same one that we've been sharing. It's just a reminder of the differences between Plans A, Plans B, and C. And then we wanted to share a short timeline so that as like a remembrance of where we've been. And July 14th, when we had the governor's executive order, then the board met shortly after that on the 20th and approved the Plan C, which made us into remote the first 9 weeks. And then the board voted, then the governor's executive order came out on the 17th. And then we had another meeting on the 30th of September, is when the decision was made for Plans A at the elementary, Plan B at the middle school, and then Plan C at the high school. So then we have a short section on the elementary. This is just a reminder of the elementary schools are eligible to be in either Plans A, B, or C. So they could be in any one of those levels, and some information around each of those levels. Then the middle school, due to the current executive order, there are only 2 options for the middle school, and that would be Plans B and Plan C. And again, it tells a little bit of information about each section. And then we get to the high school. The high school, again, is like the middle school, is that they're only allowed to either be in Plan B or Plan C. You will notice at the bottom of this particular document on the high school options is that we have the length of the school day for students and staff is to be determined, and then the schedules would reflect a full course load daily. So we sent out a survey to our high school families, since our elementary and middle school families were already in face-to-face or virtual. Based on their attendance, we knew where those families stood at whether they wanted their kids to be in school or not. And since our high school families had were not in school, we sent out the survey to them. We did send out it twice. The first time was November the 18th through the 23rd. And we did so with our families to try to get their information. But we had a very low percentage, and you will see under the first bullet under process that we had 32.5% of a response rate from our families. That was prior to the December 7th meeting. And so we had some discussion about having this on the agenda item on December the 7th. But with that very low response rate, we knew that we just needed to have some more families to participate to make sure that we were accurate in what we would be sharing. So the central office staff, we divided up and we contacted families, and that was very pleasant. It was really good for us all to take turns in calling families and talking with them. I myself enjoyed talking with several of the families, had my own little list. And what you see on this next slide would be the response rate for September. We did have 72% of our families respond in September before we went into the second 9 weeks. And for December, what we're talking about now, we ended up with around a 65% response rate with those 2 attempts there. The next chart that you see here is for Plan B and C, and you'll see the difference. It did fluctuate a little bit in September. 64% of our families wanted the Plan B, and in the December and what we're looking at today, 60%. And then you see the 36% and the 40%. The next slide that you see would be, we did survey our teachers and our high school teachers in September. 90% of them wanted to return back with their students, felt like they felt safe to do so. And then that changed just a little bit in this November-December survey. We also sent out a survey, not just to all teachers, we did just to everyone, was how satisfied are you with the current learning model? At the high school level, we had 75%, and we did receive at the middle school level 30%, and then at the elementary schools, we received 56%. That's not listed here because we're in the high school section of the presentation. So we are moving to our options, and we are presenting to you 4 different options. And this one is Plan A for elementary, Plan B, and Plan C. This is our current status. This is the current option that we're working in, where our middle school students are going 2 days a week in a blue group or a green group. Our high schools are going in full remote learning, and our elementaries are 4 days a week. Of course, Virtual Academy is throughout all 3 of these levels. So if families so choose to not be at the elementary or the middle school in a face-to-face option, they do have Virtual Academy. In option 2, this is another option that we can consider. Our elementary could stay at the Plan A, the 4 days a week. Middle school could stay in the 2 days a week. And we could move based on the current thoughts between what the families had said and our staff said, and our transportation at what we could handle is 1 day a week at our high school level. And the graphic that you see here is that for Mondays, such as that student who would attend on Monday, then below that, they would be on remote learning for Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Tuesday student would attend remote learning on Monday, Thursday, Friday, and so forth.
Quick question. On that option 2, the high school with the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and you list Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or Monday, Thursday, Friday, but they would still have remote learning on Wednesday,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
So actually, they are not in remote 3 days a week. The high schools would be in remote 4 days a week.
That's
because
correct.
throughout the system, remote learning occurs on Wednesday.
Yes, and that is consistent in each of the options that we're sharing. In option 3, just like you said, Dr. Fitch, you have that Wednesday would be in remote learning, and that would be elementary in 4 days a week, and then the middle school and the high school would be strictly remote learning. And then option 4 would be that all of our students would be in remote learning. That's 100% remote learning at all 3 levels. So this page pretty much sums it up to try to give you an idea. It looks like I remember doing this in math and teaching my students, is that you have for option 1 was at elementary, would be A, or C, so that's what we're proposing for elementary. For middle school would either be in the B or the C, and you see how they align together. So if elementary has an A, then middle would have a B, or elementary has an A and middle would have a C. You see how they kind of work together, so you don't have to have all those papers out side by side. And then at the high school level, we have one option that would allow high school to be in Plan B. And as we spoke before, in our last meeting when we were presenting this to the board, is that prioritizing one level sometimes eliminates the opportunity for other levels. So when it's prioritized at the elementary level, it says that these are the things that we could do for the middle and the high. It's important to note at the asterisk at the bottom, regardless of the option selected, students served in the adapted curriculum who currently are, as of today and tomorrow, who are in school would continue to have face-to-face option when students at any of the levels would return.
Okay.
Now that would not be a case in option 4. So when you look across there, they're all in Plan C. So that's not the option that would allow adapted curriculum because there are no students that are returning at that time. But like in option 3, we do have at least one level that is returning, which is elementary. And so then that would be the adapted curriculum would be available for the middle and the high school because we have at least one level returning.
I think it's also important to point out to board members is that option 2 is the one option that is the according to the governor's directives would allow students to attend school the most. I mean, right now the middle and high school were not, option A is not available to them. So if you're looking for that, you won't see it because it's non-allowable. Remember from our previous conversations, and I think it really does. One of the reasons why we put this table up here, it does get very confusing in between the various options. But there can be no option AAA right now, even if it was feasible to do it, because we're not allowed to do that anyway. So option 2 is the most school time inside the building that could be used right now by a school district.
Now, help me to make sure I understood, because when I look at this chart, it says that in option 3 and 4, your adapted curriculum would be face-to-face irregardless. Correct? That they're, no, yes or no?
No.
No.
Not in option 4.
Well, you have an asterisk by it.
It shouldn't have an asterisk.
So we need to remove the asterisk by option 4. And in A, B, or C, the adapted curriculum students would be there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the chart is a little
yes, ma'am.
Deceptive, because you have item 4, option 4, that they would still be there, but it's actually in options 1, 2, or 3. But in option 4, everybody is remote.
Correct.
So we need to remove that asterisk.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Now, then you go with a recommendation after you give us these 4 options. Would you want to discuss that right now?
Yes. So we have the recommendation. So based on the data that we have seen and shared with you today, as well as information from Ms. Ellen and the survey results, then we are making a recommendation that January 4th through the 22nd, our elementary, middle, and high school students would be in Plan C, which is option 4. And then we would move to starting on January 25th through June 2nd, would be Plan A for elementary, Plan B for middle, Plan B for high, which is option 2. One of the things that we want to make sure that it is very important to note for all of our families is that virtual academy will remain an option for all of our students throughout the remainder of the course in the year. We have put a note there about our instructional staff that they may return the first 2 weeks, starting on January the 4th, and the administrative staff, custodians, and district staff will return on the 4th of January, and then all of our staff would return on January the 19th. This would be similar to how we entered school for 2021, in a gradual move with our staff coming back.
So the teachers would work remote from home during the 4th through the 22nd.
We have the option to where teachers we do have some teachers who have voiced concerns based on survey results and principals sharing and asking questions. Could their teachers, even with the most recent, with our remote learning going starting on Thursday, some of our teachers have wanted to work in the school buildings.
Okay.
They've wanted to be able to present their lessons in the school rather than at home. And then we have some who would rather be able to present their lessons from home.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason that we are asking for the starting on the January the 4th through the 22nd is, like we said about the data, and the increased number of cases and contacts, as what was shared earlier. With us being out 2 days at Thanksgiving, we've had an increased number, whereas we're going to be out for our winter break a significant number of days more. And to be able to work towards without having to do the staffing. When Dr. Parker shared the staffing information for the substitutes, that's a conversation that I and many of my staff members have had with principals at how to staff classrooms when that our system for substitute keeps calling people over and over again and no one picks up, and just trying to limit the number of adults in the building moving from one classroom to the next, covering other classes. And certainly not wanting to split students up into other classes to kind of keep the groups together. So those are some of the reasons behind the recommendation.
I think also, board members, this is a recommendation that we feel that we can manage with the current requirements that we have with distancing and density. But also, this is a recommendation where the board could look at this based on feedback you've gotten today and elsewhere and say, you could look at some of the dates and make some changes with that too. This is, again, there's two pieces of this. The dates are one, but the actual configuration of what school will look like is the second part of it. So I would encourage the board to consider those parts together and separate as you're talking about it, because some of those can be modified. We think this is the best option in terms of instructional implications, but the timing of it could be something you could talk about. So I wouldn't want you to go down a path and get stuck because there's some flexibility with that. And Miss Ellen and I talked earlier today. She may be able to offer some things about timing of pieces after the holiday as well too, because that was part of our discussion. And you are seeing more systems make the decision now about coming back later and coming back remote after the holiday break. So there's two pieces to this that you can discuss.
Well, that would be one of the persons who submitted their written letter to the board was asking about that possibility, and so that certainly addresses that particular concern. And even if we go into this plan with your recommendation as given, we still, if circumstances still have us with high numbers, we could decide to stay in remote and set a different date to go into the ABB recommendation that you have made, correct?
You could, and it's also important, you know, principals and folks are already working on the scheduling component of this, but the schedule of 1 day a week for high school sounds simple, but it's not, because it is not grade-based, it is course-based. And so we're closing out the semester with assessments and testing now. Teachers have plenty of work to do to get grades in and finish that process, but also the scheduling component's already taking place, but then we've got to go back and match that up with transportation, with siblings who may also be in the building, because we want to split families across that schedule for 1 day a week. So we would need to look at that. So there is some preparation time that we have to look at. It's not as simple as us doing it back in August. We couldn't have done this earlier to figure out some of the scheduling. It's as needed basis as we're getting towards the end of the semester and looking at grades and looking at performance to try and match them up and do those course selections too. So there's a lot of work that takes place in between there. So that also allows some time to figure out the logistics. The semester will start on the 4th. The new semester, new instruction will start on the 4th, the new courses. But the logistics behind some of that and scheduling is another layer. So
I was going to ask how, if you go with a B plan at the high school, if a child comes to school on Monday, that means that each of their 4 core classes, their whole schedule is going to be in school that one day, and the other 3 classes would be remote, or is it going to be as you did this time with an AB?
No. What you described first, in the fact that it would look more like a traditional day.
So they would get each of their blocks in that one day that they're there?
Every day. Well, every day, whether they're remote or whether they're face-to-face. Students at the high school for second semester will, if they have 4 classes, then they will have all 4 classes. And if they are a face-to-face student, then if they're there on Monday, then they will go to all 4 of their classes face-to-face on Monday. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they would be remote for those 4 classes.
So just for clarification and to break it down, because I'm a simple fella. So, you know, hypothetically, you have in a first block class, half the class may be face-to-face, the remainder of that class would be learning remote? Is that what we're envisioning?
It could.
Or something like that?
It could be. We have looked at the list alphabetically by the classes, and that's part of this reason that we would need the time, as what Dr. Mills shared, because this English 2 might have several A's or B's or whatever, and then we would use those letters from those names to try to keep it separated of a quarter, not a half, but a quarter of those students who decided to be face-to-face.
But while they're face-to-face, the remainder of the class is going to be learning remote. Everybody's getting the same information at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
They would not be a week behind each other.
I just like to make sure.
No, it's fine.
That's very reasonable.
You know,
Yes.
I was thinking the same thing, because it's difficult on a teacher to be dealing with part of the students in front of them and part of them remotely and trying to provide the same things. It's just, we can't hardly expect double duty. They, you know, go into the night doing the remote or something. So, I'm sure these are things that you've thought through and familiar with already. But
Yes, we have been working, and I think that some of the public comments, or maybe some comments that you may have heard out in the community, is about our students who are sitting face-to-face, having the teacher in front of them, and then the students who are working remotely would be working on a recorded or asynchronous type lesson. And so some of the equipment that Mr. Mayo has shared, just like with the document camera, earbuds that we have purchased for our teachers, is so that just like right now, where we have face-to-face board members and people in this room, and then we have individuals who are online, that it's synchronously, it's live. That is our goal. That is what we are working towards, and we have been able to accomplish that in many of our classrooms at the elementary and the middle school. Now, we have some of our, say, in our elementary schools that don't have any students who are virtual. I have, like we have some schools that in kindergarten, like we only have 11 children in the whole kindergarten in school are virtual academy. So there might be some kindergarten classrooms that don't have to do that. But we'll have some kindergarten classrooms that would, and consecutively for other grades. So the equipment is extremely important to be able to make that happen. We have to have the equipment. And the other thing is to have the training. We've worked on that already with our staff and that professional development, and being able to have these weeks in January would allow us to do some of those additional training for our high school teachers.
And I think we're fortunate to have the people with foresight to prepare, because if I understand it correctly, there are school systems that are having major problems with connectivity, and which I don't think we have major problems with that.
Yeah, we've had more issues with things that are outside of our control. Just like this morning, we had issues with Google, and that was happening between like 7:30, 8 o'clock, something like that. So that's outside of our control. That was not the connectivity. That was, but it was back up and running and got it all fixed, or they did, before classes really started too far into the day.
That was a broad swath of Google, like
yes,
YouTube went down, a whole bunch of things went down.
It was.
Now, let me ask you about, as a result of taking all 4 classes, which means there's going to be movement in the buildings of students. I suppose there's some kind of plan in that to minimize the distancing, or to minimize the contacts from being close.
Yeah, we have received the number, like you said, on the number of the percentage of families who are interested in their students coming back. We also have a good number of our students who are taking CCP courses. While they may have said that they were not interested in coming back, I spoke to a few parents myself that said, I'm going to say no, I'm not coming back, or my student's not coming back because my child is already virtual. We have several students who are anywhere from 1 CCP course to 4 CCP courses. So they were not going to step their foot on campus to start with. We have a total of 265 of those students that have at least 1 online class prior to even COVID or anything, 115 taking 2, 34 taking 3, and 43 taking 4, 6 taking 5, and 1 taking 6 CCP.
Some ambitious children.
Yes, that's right. So we do have, like, the number gets lower and lower of families who are choosing the virtual academy, families who have already chosen the CCP course, to where we, based on their current request. Now, that doesn't mean that come January, when they actually get back into school, that parents wouldn't change their mind again. We have seen that happen, to where parents wanted face-to-face, then they got in 2 weeks, and it moved around. But on the current numbers that we have, it is workable. It is something that we can make happen with the 1 day a week at the high school. We wish that we could do more than 1 day a week, but at this point, we cannot do more than 1 day a week to minimize that number that would be in the hallway traveling.
Well, I think a lot of the high school students will appreciate the opportunity to have that physical interaction with their classmates, because they have been at home the entire time for the most part. And so I think that the opportunity to engage face-to-face and not just on the screen with some of their classmates will be welcomed by the high school students.
It does, we've looked at so many of these plans, all 3 of them, and there's not one plan that we could step back and we could say, this is the one we're going to pick because it's the easiest. There are pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages off of each one. And there's not one plan that is the easiest or the hardest. But in trying to pull together all the different thoughts of our different stakeholders, and what is in the best interest, we talked about the guiding principles. The 2 things that we want to do is to make sure that our students and our staff are safe and that they have access to the curriculum. And so does that mean with appropriate staff, with appropriate equipment, appropriate schedules, appropriate plan, and try to pull all that together is what we came up with this recommendation.
Well, Dr. Wilson, for you and the other members of senior staff and supporting people, I appreciate the work that it's taken. It's been, when there's just absolutely not a solution, that's a difficult thing to deal with, and I appreciate and very much the effort that's gone into that.
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Barnes.
I would also like to ditto Mr. Mercer's comments, because this is quite a challenge. And I go to bed at night thinking what's best. I'm sure other board members do. Dr. Wilson and her staff have done all of the hard work looking at all the pieces: maintenance, transportation, the food, for our cafeteria workers, just everything. And I think my decision would be to vote for their recommendation, because it will give all of the students an opportunity, some of them to do some mending, some of them that will have traveled right at Christmas time, to have a period of, I don't want to call it incubation, but to be able to quarantine themselves and be ready to come back to school. And with the plan that they've laid out, it gives all of the areas, elementary, middle, and high, an opportunity to interact in the classroom setting, which is what our goal is, to reopen schools and get children face-to-face interacting.
I've got one additional question. I guess this might be more for Ms. Cornetta than Dr. Wilson, but for the sake of for our virtual academy folks who are, solely asynchronous, what are going to be the rules regarding like using kid name or student names in the recordings? Like, is that going to be verboten, because that's going to be recorded and rebroadcasted in a situation that we may not have?
Which reports?
Excuse me?
Which reports are you referencing?
Some of the recordings.
Recordings. So we're recording our lessons. Right. We're going to have kids in the classroom, kids learning live, and then we've got the asynchronous piece where the virtual academy people.
Sorry, I heard reports, not record.
Oh,
recordings.
Yes.
If they're done, I don't know how it's structured here, but you can put out,
You got to turn your volume up, probably.
Normally, they tell lawyers not to lean into the microphone, but I'm having to do the same thing too, and it's really weird.
No, it's very unnatural. But I'm I'm trying to abide by the mask, but I can't even hear with the mask on. But all I was saying is, it depends on the notice that's given to the parents about the lessons. Typically, when there's synchronous learning going on, the tendency is to not have the students involved, and if they are, there's notice to the parents. And I don't know how it's set up here, but I'm happy to work with staff to make sure that students aren't exposed without parental permission.
Okay. Because I know that's been a consideration in other
Absolutely.
systems.
It is everywhere, and I think the biggest way to handle it is to make sure that the parents have knowledge ahead of time about what the lessons will be, how they'll be delivered, and some of the ways to keep things organized is that only the class members can have access to the recordings, and they're not transferable. So you can go back and listen to a lesson as needed, but you can't transmit it anywhere.
So one of our works to get to that point is through Google Streaming, and many of our classrooms are doing that, to where the teacher is teaching, but you don't, like, the teacher might see the students, but you don't see, like, what we see up here is the Hollywood Squares or the that kind of thing. But Google Streaming does not have that.
Right. And there's ways to, disable the camera, but most districts who are doing the synchronous learning and recording of it do not have the images of the students shown unless there's prior parental notice and permission in writing.
Dr. Wilson, with option or the recommendation that we have here, the January 4th through the 22nd, are those dates able to change?
Oh, yes, yeah, that's our recommendation, based on that information. But, I mean, if the board so chooses to where it's earlier or later,
so
that's
like,
your choice.
If we said, January, say you stayed on C through January 11th, which would give you a 14-day period after Christmas. Would that be feasible as far as an operational standpoint to be able to get the schools and staff together?
Well, we did look at that at the 2 weeks, but we were also worried about as Ms. Barnes talked about, was that incubation, or to stretch those cases and contacts out. Because as we mentioned earlier, it's not the positive cases that have caused us the largest hurdle. It's the contacts. And it's not just contacts within, with staff members within our school system. Because if my husband tested positive, then I'm a contact, but not because of Wilson County Schools. But it's and if I'm teaching a class of 90 students, then that's going to affect 90 students. And so that's where the problem came in, and where we wanted to stretch it out. But that is certainly a board decision.
Well, yeah, our AU and EC programs have really been affected by this. And I'm concerned that, this is just another 3 weeks that, they're basically not going to be getting a lot of instruction.
Well, I would hope that wouldn't be true.
Well, I mean, I've got an autistic child at home. And, this is a very difficult, virtual learning is very difficult for him.
Yeah.
And, this is, the C option is a very big concern for me. And, probably countless other parents out there.
It is a very difficult, I mean, there are some students who are thriving in the remote learning, and there are some students, just on the other hand, that are not. And we recognize that, and that's why some of our principals and our teachers have been working closely with them.
Is there a way that you could change or make it so that if you were in C, or in the C program where our EC kids could get back in face-to-face?
Well, again, I think that's a board decision, but I do think that it's an important note about the staffing. So will we have the staff to be able to make that happen?
Yeah, I think when we were sharing this initially, these are all the points we talked about, and it is very, very challenging no matter what is. First, you've got the option, does this configuration work for the board? Okay, with some semblance of remote, and then ADB. That's one piece. The timing of it is also, as Mr. Boykin pointed out, and others have pointed out, the timing piece of it, you've heard from staff members, you've heard from parents as well, about not only the options, but the timing of it. And you've seen the uptick we've had in cases and contacts since the Thanksgiving holiday. So we know there's going to be a longer period of time. People are home and visiting of their own choice, which is fine. But we're trying to build in a buffer for that bubble coming back so that parents can go ahead and plan and know. So, but there is no good answer to any of that because there's no crystal ball of what will happen afterwards for the remote for our students, especially our students with disabilities. None of that waiting period is going to be easy for C. And then again, we know many of our staff members are concerned about coming back too. They've made that very clear, and rightfully so. So there's a balance, and we're looking for a balance when frankly there may be no balance. There really is no good answer to an A, a B, or a C because a third of the people will be happy about it and 2/3 won't. And so we've seen that from the start. What we tried to do is lay out various options that, based on the feedback you've gotten, based on where we think we can provide support and manage it, it's doable. So these are the doable pieces of it. The timing of it is, I mean, it really is up to the board when you feel comfortable, based on what you've seen and what we've shown you about the return piece, knowing that if you come back later, that's longer remote for students that need face-to-face. If you go back sooner, that means staff members are more nervous about coming back after a holiday when we've seen upticks since Thanksgiving. So there's a balance piece. I don't know where that balance is. I don't think anybody does right now. It's just unknown. So all we can tell you is based on everything we've seen, we think this is manageable in terms of the configuration. The timing of it could change depending on what happens over the break itself. That's the other thing that school systems are struggling with is when is it not going to have as much impact on contacts, for instance, in most of the cases, so that we can staff. Right now we're seeing limits on our custodial staff, limits on our teaching and TAs and subs, limits on people's understanding of what's happening with contacts versus cases, and quarantines, and we've seen it with child nutrition. So, I mean, it has been an explosion of it. It's gone, and I think people's patience is limited right now because people are truly scared and worried in the unknown. So, I mean, you've got all these pieces and parts in it, and you're talking about your children. You're talking about your most precious things, and we're talking about our staff members that do anything for them and are doing all these extra things on top of it. So, people are really needing a break right now to figure out where we're going next, and the numbers are continuing to increase, and we're seeing that too. So it is a mixed bag of what ifs. So regardless of those pieces, we just need direction on coming back at some point. Will this work? Is that okay with the board? And then two is, will this timing work, or do we need to back it down, knowing if we back it down, what can say that's less face time for our students in need. So less face time for everybody. We get that. But if we come back earlier, are we going to have enough staff to cover if the contacts continue like they've been continuing? So I do think we need to let parents and families and staff know kind of what to predict and plan for. Although all bets are off, something could change tomorrow or the holiday. We don't know. That's what makes this really difficult, and why I think people are frustrated. Again, rightfully so. The predictability of what things we can control and how they go is out the door. And that's every school system in the state. Especially in a system like ours where we've got a lot of incidents happening in our county around us. And the contacts, many of which, again, are not happening in our schools. The contacts are happening out. The cases aren't happening in our schools. They're carryovers. So, we've tried to plan for best and worst. But I would suggest there is no good balance between all these. It's going to have a pinch point somewhere. So I don't have the answer to it, and I don't think anyone does, or we would have it all laid out. So I really do think the conversation about it is very important on both sides of early, late, this option, that option. There are people that are going to be affected on both sides of it, and students affected on both sides of it. And that's what we've seen all along is it is hard to predict what will and won't work until we've gotten done some of it and seen some things that affected us that we couldn't have planned for. So I say all that not to stall or to push around and say there is no easy choice, but you know,
there is
no easy choice. So whatever you do is probably not going to be completely popular or easy, fun, or good for all parties involved, but it is the decisions we have to make right now.
All right.
And you know, and again, I do think it's amplified right now because people are extremely tired and worried because we've seen the numbers. It's been a long semester of constant change. We do need to break, but we know when we come back, we've got plenty to do, and the semester's waiting on us. So I don't envy anybody having to operate in this environment, but I do know our teachers and principals and students are working very hard, and it is overwhelming at times, and it's legit.
All right.
Dr. Mills, just like you said, and everybody knows and said, some people are served, or students are served better by
yes.
Remote, some, or the preferences are some face-to-face. But the third category in there is if we get into it too early, and it starts being wishy-washy, you're in and then you're out, and you're in and then you're out.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating for everybody, but I agree with Mr. Boykin. Well, first of all, in conversations earlier, Mr. Boykin, there was some preference as far as getting back to face-to-face expressed for the primary grades and the exceptional children, because they're the ones that probably will have more difficulty dealing with the remote learning, if my memory serves me correctly.
That's correct.
Yeah. So that need has been acknowledged, and it is there, and it's real, I believe. But to me, it's important that we try to time it in a way as best we can, that what we do will be sustainable, that we can get into it and get into a routine. Families can make arrangements that they don't have to change in a week or two, or change for 2 weeks. And that's all what's up in there when you throw it up. And how soon can we get a reading on how things are going after the break? We want to get back as soon as we can, but we want to be careful too. So to me, and at the same time, what makes it difficult is, no matter which way you go, you're going to be inconveniencing or whatever. I think the plan you've come up with sounds good. Now, I'd like to think that if we come back from the break and everything seems to fall in place, all our employees and everybody has had a chance to recover and be ready to tackle second semester, to get back as soon as we can. Just like if it goes to pieces, we might have to extend it. So, and I've said all of that and said nothing, probably. But it's that confusing and complicated.
But I will say this. Normally, every time we talk about the schedules, I seem to always be the one fist fighting for more, and I always sort of rally against what the administration recommends. But it happens.
I didn't think that.
We disagree, and that's good. Healthy disagreements are fine, but just to personally share for everybody out there, she's not listening, so she won't care. But my wife is a nurse on the COVID floor at UNC Nash, and they are packed to the gills right now. And we talked about this and trying to figure out what's best. And I don't want to say the hard truth is, because it's wonderful when it happens, but families and friends are going to love on each other over the holidays. People are going to get together irrespective of the governor's order. And they're going to do what families and friends have done ever since familial relationships and friend relationships have existed. And I'll say all that to say that I'm in favor of the district's recommendations, and I understand that it's going to be hard. My kids are going to hate it. There are going to be a lot of, and I know that there are a lot of parents that are going to be adversely affected as a result of this. But if having a longer time gives us a better opportunity and more stability in the future, I think that is probably the best course for parents and students and our faculty and staff long term.
Excuse me, I agree, because I tell you what, the employees, the families, they've been beat up this first semester. I mean, in the sense, and they need time to recover.
I see you, Ms. Boyette. I'll get you when he's finished.
Yes, ma'am. I'm finished.
All right, Ms. Boyette.
Ms. Barnes too, I think.
And Ms.
Thank
Barnes.
you for seeing my raised hand.
Okay, and Ms. Powell. I got you, Ms. Powell.
I got a question. I'm fine with going back, staying out 4th through 22nd, but I've got a question about when we go back on the 25th. Elementary A and middle and B, are we going to stay with the Wednesday as a cleaning day? In other words, are we going to plan to keep that same schedule? And what about at high school? Are you still going to, are they going to be out on Wednesday, or are you going to have them in for 5 days since there's only one of them? I mean, they're only going 1 day a week.
No, I think the option showed that every Wednesday was still the remote deep clean.
Yeah.
So that everybody would be remote on Wednesdays.
Because another part to that is that it's a professional learning day.
Yeah, okay, I'm not opposed to it. I am for it, because I'm afraid that the elementary teachers that are having to do their own class, the face-to-face lessons as well as their virtual lessons, and so they're teaching, double duty, they might just give up. Well, no, they wouldn't give up, but in other words, that Wednesday is important for them to keep their sanity and in any way manage the workload.
Yeah, the Wednesday stays the same for everybody. It's still a remote day, PD day, cleaning day, across all 3 schedules.
Okay, I'm sorry, Dr. Wilson. Did you want to respond further to that?
Yeah, Ms. Boyette, I was going to mention, when you mentioned about the virtual academy, lots of our teachers shared in their recent survey that they believed that we needed to have the dedicated virtual academy. So we have a group of principals who will be meeting with us to discuss the possibility of the dedicated virtual academy. And that might be using this January the 4th through the 22nd to help organize that to where teachers would not have both the face-to-face and the virtual academy. We tried that at the beginning. We just didn't have those who would raise their hand and say, pick me. So we are circling back around, because it was not unanimous, but it was almost unanimous in the teacher surveys. And so we are taking a look at that again.
Okay, Mrs. Powell and then Mrs. Barnes.
Yes, I believe our top priority should be the safety and mental health of our students and our staff. Without staff in place, there will be no instruction. Having that time from January 4th through the 22nd, I think would be enough time, and if we can lengthen it out, I'm okay with that too, but that would be enough time to actually give our staff a chance to get back and acclimated. And after the holidays, a lot goes on, a lot happens. So that way we can make sure they're safe. So on that note, I'm moving that we accept the recommendation from the staff of the 2021 second semester transition plan.
I'll second.
That ended that quickly.
Yeah.
It has been moved by Mrs. Powell and seconded by Mrs. Barnes that the recommendation presented by the administration that we return on January 4th through the 22nd with all schools on a remote learning schedule, and from the 25th of January to June the 2nd, that our elementary be in the A option, that's all the students back in school, and middle and high school on the B option, which is a hybrid learning where there is remote 4 days a week, in place. No, that's not quite correct. At the high school level, it's remote 4 days a week, in place 1 day. And at the middle school, it would be a half and half. So 2 days on, 2 days remote, 3 days remote and 2 days face-to-face. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
No.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Dr. Fitch? Aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries 6-1 with Mr. Boykin in opposition. We do know that whatever we have decided here today, that the administration reserves the right to make changes in the schedule based upon the numbers that get reported, and that if necessary, we will revisit this at a later time. But thank you so much. All of the work and effort that has gone into this development of these options and the plans is quite evident. We certainly do thank the teachers and all of the staffs within the schools for the yeoman's effort that has been put forth to this point in making sure that this is carried out. We do fully understand that face-to-face is the best of the options if we were in a non-COVID environment, but given where we are right now, and we have to take into account the facts and the figures that have been shared with us by the administration and by the health department, and we thank all of the partners for that information.
Madam Chair?
Mrs. Ellen?
Yes, I just wanted to offer some other good news. Vaccine is on the way. We are expecting here at the health department to have our first doses delivered to us sometime the week of the 21st.
Oh.
We will begin by vaccinating healthcare workers, but the really good news is that educators are in our group 1B. So we expect that we'll be able to offer it to our teachers by the end of January or the 1st of February.
That is good news.
So they can all go out to wash, or do they need to come to the health department?
Hey, anyone lead us in the hallelujah chorus?
I will, hallelujah.
Okay, Ms.
Ellen. Comment,
wait a minute,
Dr. Fitch,
just one second.
from a parent I have to make.
Just a moment, Ms. Barnes. Ms. Ellen, did you say these vaccinations would be available at the health department or at WASH?
We will probably do it similar to the way we did the flu vaccine this year, where we will use our WASH staff, but we'll go to each individual school.
Okay, then I'm sure you will let us know the particulars as we come back and as your plans get developed a little more. Thank you so.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much.
Dylan just texted me, she's fast.
And now Ms. Barnes, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make a comment because I promised a parent I would, because she had talked to several parents whose children were failing, and she said to please implore parents to look at Power School, because some of the students that were failing, parents were not keeping up and were not aware of their failures. but to please, please, please keep up with your students' grades in Power School.
Thank you so much for that,
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Mercer.
And Dr. Mills, Dr. Wilson, is there some way to help parents? I'm sure you've been trying to inform them and advise them and stuff, but if their technology skills are like mine, it takes more than encouragement. I don't mean that ugly about them any more than about me, but I mean, some parents have not had the opportunity to be experienced with technology, and they just need to be walked through it probably better than saying it's available, just follow the directions. People tell me that all the time, and I get nowhere with it.
Yes, sir. We do have, we have had lots of, or several different parent sessions on different topics, whether it be for K2 or 3-5 or any particular part, like with the Google Classroom or so forth. But we also have our technology department open up until 6 o'clock every evening, Monday through Thursday, for our students, staff, and families.
Thank you.
Till 6 o'clock.
Till 6 o'clock for individualized calls.
I think we mentioned that at the last board meeting, and could you, for sake of clarity, give us the phone number that they can call? If you can, before we go away.
I will.
Thank you so much.
I think I have it, but I would rather look it up
Make
before
sure.
I say the wrong number.
Absolutely.
I'm sure Mr. Mayo is listening.
Oh, is
and he
Mr.
can-
Mayo still on the phone?
Yes, he's
On the line?
Yes, he is. He probably has it
Yes.
memorized.
What is that
Yes,
phone
it's-
number?
It's 399-7717. 399-7717.
So to our public, if you are in need of some extra technology assistance, please feel free to call 399-7717, which will connect you with our technology department, where someone is available until 6 o'clock to try to help you with any of your technology-related issues in terms of your students and your understanding of the technology to better help your students. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyette?
are the high school and middle school students only getting, emails, or, how are they getting their report card at the end of the semester? I mean, my concern here being that, if they aren't, if parents aren't up to date with the Power School, how are they gonna know that their child has actually failed that course at the end of the semester? And like at the high school, will not be in the next course if it's a series. How are we going to notify, how are we going to ensure that parents do know that we get some attention from those that might not be logging in and doing their work, and their parents don't know it? How are we going to ensure that?
They will receive a hard copy of their report card. We have used that process that you're talking about, Ms. Boyette, for the progress reports, to get the parents to log in on the progress reports, just to minimize the number of times that, because like in first 9 weeks, we didn't have students in the building, and try to get parents used to the Power School. But for report cards, they would be a hard copy. That, we did that at the end, even at the end of the first 9 weeks as well.
All right. Any other questions or comments? As we move forward, 2021, 2022 Board of Education meetings.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we've got a schedule for meetings. In the past, our meetings were held on the third Monday of each month, from February through October. November through January, we were meeting on the second Monday. And we also had the June board meeting a little bit earlier to meet deadlines for hiring decisions. We've got a draft schedule for the board to take a look at. And again, we're under some different circumstances right now with the current remote and in person. So these are the dates on your screen for the meetings beginning this summer.
All right, and I think you had two different schedules in, and one had a strike-through with the change from June 20th to June 6th, and that is so that HR can make its mandated. So please note that, and once we are off of remote learning or off of the mandates of the governor, we will be changing our meetings to 6:30, where they had been being held at 7:30. We agreed that meetings would begin at 6:30 once we are off our remote meetings. So currently we are still on for 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Members of the board, please know that I will be touching base with you in order to set the committee assignments, because you have indicated that once we return to the regular meetings that you still want committees so that they can function. So please know that I will be in touch with you to make sure that we get your committee assignments set. All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move to approve the board meeting schedule for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the 2021-2022 Board of Education meeting schedule as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Please record your vote, Mrs. Barnes.
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette.
Aye.
Mr. Boykin.
Aye.
Mr. Breen.
Aye.
Mr. Mercer.
Aye.
Mrs. Powell.
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. I've asked the vice chair to make the motion to move us into closed session today until the committees are established. Mr. Mercer?
Madam Chair, I move that the Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session to consider confidential personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A 1 and 6 and 115C-319 through 21 to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and North Carolina General Statutes 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S.C. 1232G to establish or give instructions concerning the Board of Education's negotiating position concerning a potential acquisition and/or lease of real property as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A5 and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11.11A3.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Mercer, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, that we move into closed session to consider confidential personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and 6 and 115C-319 through 321 to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and North Carolina General Statutes 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 United States Code 1232G to establish or give instructions concerning the Board of Education's negotiating position concerning a potential acquisition and/or lease of real property as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A5, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your response. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
She said aye.
She said aye. She's muted, but her response is aye. Thank you. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously, and we are now adjourned to closed session.